All right, Revelation chapter 12. Now, just a reminder, as we've been saying, the book of Revelation is in chronological order, right, in general. We have, what do we have? We have, all right, there come the Sunday school kids. So what do we have in the book of Revelation? We have 7 seals, and then the 7th seal is 7 trumpets. So then we have 7 trumpets, and the 7th trumpet is 7 vials of wrath, right? And so each of those is given in order. It says, okay, this is coming. The angel comes. Remember, if you just go through, it says, and then I saw this, and then I saw that. It's very clear. The 7 vials, the 7 seals are in chronological order. The 7 trumpets are in chronological order. The 7 vials of wrath are in chronological order. All right? And so when you get to the next one, for example, we got to the 5th trumpet, an angel went in the midst of heaven, and flew in the midst of heaven. He said, "Woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth, because of the 3 trumpets that are yet to sound." Now, if he says, "I'm announcing woe to the earth because there are 3 trumpets that are going to sound," is that a future statement? Is that future? Yes. So that means the previous 4 trumpets were past, and the following 3 trumpets are future, which means the trumpets are in chronological order. Another example of this is, and you might be like, well, this is obvious, isn't it, Pastor? Well, not everybody believes that the book of Revelation is in chronological order. Okay? Not everybody does. And so that's why I'm explaining. That's why I repeat that. Because as you journey through life, you're going to meet people who are post-millennial, people who are amillennial. And they're going to say, oh, the book of Revelation is just a lot of symbols of jumbled of all different things in history, and it's not in chronological order. Well, the problem is, if you read the book of Revelation, you'll see it is clearly in chronological order. Another example is the 5th seal. Remember the 5th seal? It says, I saw the souls of those who were under the altar, and that were slain for the testimony. It said, Lord, how long until you avenge our blood? Wait, how long? Is that a statement of time? Is that a statement of a progression of time? And it says robes were given to them, and they said they should wait a little while until the rest of their brethren should be killed. Wait a little, is wait the language of time? A little while until the rest of their brethren. Okay, so clearly the 5th seal there is a chronology. Okay? And that's very important, because then when you get to the 6th seal, okay, if this is a chronology, if you get to the 6th seal and it says, and the sun was dark and the moon didn't give her light, and the stars fell from the heavens, right? And there was a great earthquake. And every single rich man and poor man and bondman and free and slave and all the great men, they hid themselves, and they said to the rocks, mountains, fall on us and hide us from the wrath of him, from the face of him that sitteth on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb, for the great day of his wrath has come. Who is able to stand? So if it's in chronological order, we haven't reached that yet, have we? We have not reached the 6th seal. And so if it's in chronological order, we are before the 6th seal in the book of Revelation. And then, of course, you tie that into Matthew 24, and that's when the rapture happens. One will be taken, two will be grinding the middle, one will be taken, the other less. So people say, oh, that's talking about the end. No, it's not. And I'll tell you why. Because then you read farther down, and it says the day and the hour no man knows, that only the Father, right? He's referring to the rapture. And he tells his disciples, when he's talking about that moment, when he comes in the sky and everyone sees him, he's still referring to that moment in Matthew 24. And at the very end of Matthew 24, what does he say? That's why I say the rapture is not going to be a secret. It's not going to be invisible. Everybody's going to see Jesus when he comes back. But I understand, then the 7-year period starts. But that whole idea, you won't find anywhere in the Bible that we're going to disappear. Everyone is going to see us go up. Everybody's going to see Jesus in the sky. How do we know? Because otherwise, how would they say to the mountains and the rocks, fall on us and hide us from the wrath of the Lamb? By the way, because people have that idea of a secret rapture that happens before any of the seals, because of that, that's one of the reasons why I have a commentary. And in the commentary, he said, and during this time, many of the people on the earth are going to realize that this is a judgment from God. The reason he says that is because he's trying to figure out, how do you place that moment when they say to the rocks and the mountains, fall on us, right? And so it doesn't fit his theory that if we just disappear, then everybody's going to have a different theory about why we disappeared. And so he says many of the people. But the passage doesn't say many of the people. It says every single human being in the world is going to say that. And the Bible says that they're going to see the Son of Man. Okay? And how do we know that's referring to the rapture? Again, because you get to the, all referring to the same event, when you get to the end, he says to his disciples, you be all ready because you don't know when I'm coming. He says it to his disciples. And so the disciples went out preaching the gospel, believing that it could happen in their lifetime. The Apostle Paul said about the rapture, then we which are alive and remain. We means Paul was including himself. I know, I'm homeschooled, but I know enough English, and in Greek it says we as well. I know enough English to know that we means Paul's including himself in that. If I say we, I'm including myself, okay? And so they believe that. So as you go through, you see that the language of time and chronology is in Revelation. Throughout Revelation, it's a succession of events. Now, here's one of the things that throws people off, and Revelation 12 is one of them. In Revelation 12, we have an example of a woman giving birth to Jesus Christ. Right? The man-child is rule the nations all. And they go, well, that happened before the book of Revelation was written. So there you see, and I used to make this same argument. There you see, it's not in chronological order. I used to say the same thing. But however, the reason that it's saying that is because in order to explain to you why the devil is on the earth and he's angry, and why he's going to set up his Antichrist kingdom, and why he is persecuting Israel, in order to explain that to you, John was given a vision. That's why he said, I saw a great wonder in heaven. He's given a vision of the beginning of that when Jesus was born. Okay? So what the book of Revelation is doing is it is going in chronological order, but there are times where it pauses and it goes back and it tells you, meanwhile, here's how all this started. Does that make sense? It'd be like if I was telling you a story. And the story was chronological. You've read books that are like this. You've read novels, right? Where you're reading and you get to a certain point and then it switches. Like the next chapter, it tells you what's going on somewhere else, right? Novels do this all the time. And it will go back earlier. Because it's telling you, okay, so at the end of this week, Detective so-and-so was researching this homicide. And then it'll go switch and it'll go back and now it'll tell you the story of somebody else in another city and what they were doing a week before, right? And sometimes it'll even have it on there. It'll say Friday, May 15th in there. So you know it's jumping back. And that it's doing that because it tells the story better to give you the whole story of the one person and then to go back and start over and tell you the story of a different person. So the Apostle John is being given a background of Satan and how Satan got to where he's at in this midway point in the 7-year period that we're studying now. Okay? Apostle John. So that's why he goes back. So the title of this study is The Woman and the Dragon. We studied verses 1 and 2 last week, so we'll keep going here. As we talked about last week, the woman is Israel. We know this because she gives birth to Jesus and because she is persecuted by the dragon. Now, we'll see as we go, but it says the woman was persecuted and then she was hid by God for 1,260 days. All right? So 1,260 days, that's the time period that the two witnesses are prophesying. That's how you know it's not referring to Mary. If the woman was Mary, Mary's in heaven now. She's not on the earth. The 1,260 days is referring to the time period that the two witnesses are prophesying, which is from the middle of the 7-year period until the end of the 7-year period. That's the time that the two witnesses are prophesying. So when it says the woman went to the wilderness and she was hidden for 1,260 days, that phrase, 1,260 days, is clearly in Revelation referring to the midway point to the end of the 7-year period. So it is not, the woman is not Mary. Some people think that. They think woman is Mary. The woman isn't Mary. Okay, the woman is Israel. And again, we proved that last week, Genesis 37. Right? It says, the woman, she was clothed with the sun, the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. And Joseph had a dream. The sun and the moon and 11 stars made obeisance to me. that was a picture of Jacob's family, right? In Joseph's dream, and his father understood it. He said, shall your mother and your brethren and your father bow down indeed to you, right? Jacob understood. He rebuked Joseph for telling the dream, even though, of course, the dream did come true, right? But he rebuked Joseph for telling the dream. He said, we're not going to bow down to you, son. Well, you think really just because I gave you a coat of many colors, well, that really went to your head. And now you're having dreams of grandeur, right? But it says, but his father marked the same, right? He paid attention. He was like, that's strange. Well, then it ended up happening, right? So in the Bible, the sun, the moon, and the 12 stars is symbolically refers to Jacob's family, okay? And so this woman that gives birth is Israel. She's giving birth she gives birth to Jesus because Jesus is born from the nation of Israel. Now, 3 through 4, we'll read this now. Let's see where my pen is here. It says there, verse 3, Revelation 12, verse 3, and there appeared another wonder in heaven. Now, in your notes, it's the word wonder. The reason I'm telling you that is wonder, it's talking about a vision that he has, and it's a symbol that has a meaning, okay? So it calls it a wonder, like the Bible talks about signs and wonders, okay? And behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns upon his heads. Now, I'm not going to talk about the 7 heads, 10 horns, 7 crowns upon his heads right now, because that's going to be explained to us in chapters 13 and 14. Okay? It will be explained to us. It's also explained in chapters 16 and 17 when it talks about Babylon. The 7 horns and 10 heads have to do with, and 7 crowns upon his heads, that has to do with different wicked rulers on the earth that the devil controls them. Okay? But the Bible's going to tell us more about that later. I'm not going to take the time to talk about it now because you understand we're going to get to another passage where it's going to explain that. The point of this chapter is not what the 7 heads and 7 heads and 10 horns are. The point of the chapter is who the dragon is. Does that make sense? So we're talking about the woman and the dragon. We'll get to the beast and the 7 heads and the 10 horns later. Okay, so this is talking about the dragon. So we're talking about the woman and the dragon. We explained who the woman was. The woman is clearly Israel. Again, it can't be anyone but Israel because of the fact that Mary isn't going to be on the earth. And Mary already gave birth to Jesus, and the child was caught up to God in his throne. And Mary's not going to be on the earth during the 1260 days, okay? So it's referring to Israel. Verse 4, and his tail drew the 3rd part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. Now, did King Herod try to kill Jesus when he was born? Yes, so the devil was trying to kill Jesus. Okay? So that's verses 3 through 4. So the word is wonder, and then the next word is the word dragon. There appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon. Okay, the dragon is the devil. We know this because, are you ready? Wait for it. He's called the devil in verse 9. I know. The book of Revelation is really hard to understand. Dragons, what is this? Yeah, he's called the devil in verse 9. Verse 9, the great red dragon was cast out. The great dragon, that old serpent called the devil and Satan. Hey, let's see here. I wonder if I can understand this verse 9. The great dragon was cast out, that old serpent, is there a serpent in the garden? Mm-hmm. Called the devil and Satan. Are we clear yet? This person is, if the plain sense makes good sense. Which deceiveth the whole world. Yeah, I think so. And he was cast in the earth. His angels were cast out with him. So what happened is his tail drew the 3rd part of the stars of heaven. That's a picture, right? A symbol. His angels were cast out with him. His tail drew the 3rd. He took a 3rd of the angels with him. A 3rd of the angels followed the devil when he went to the earth. Now, it's comforting to know there are twice as many good angels as bad angels. Is that comforting to know? It's very comforting. You know what else? It wouldn't really matter if God was all by himself and there were a million angels that all rebelled against him, because he literally created them. He could just speak the word and they would just cease to exist, right? So it doesn't really matter. The numbers don't matter with God because he created everything that exists, right? So nothing can defeat God because he can't create something that will destroy him. That's not even possible, right? It's not possible to create something that destroys you. That can't happen. So So it doesn't really matter. But it's still comforting to know in the Bible, remember what happened. Remember what Elisha said to his servant. Fear not, for they that be with us are more than they that be with them. It's comforting to know he only got a third of the angels to follow him. So you might be like, okay, so why is he called a dragon? Why is he called a serpent? Why is he called the devil? Why is he called Satan? What's the point of all these statements? Well, he's a dragon because a dragon is like a powerful creature who like breathes fire, can kill, right? So it's like a destroyer, like it's his power of destruction, right? That's why the picture of the dragon, right? But then it's also a serpent. A serpent slithers around and can, in the night, you don't see him, you step on him, he bites you, right? A serpent has poison, right? And a serpent was in the garden, right? So the serpent like talks about his deceptive nature, right? He lies and deceives, and he's got poison of sin. He can convince you to sin. Once you sin, now you have the poison of sin in you. And the Bible says that because of sin, we are all children of the devil. Because we get his poison in us when we sin. Every single human being chooses to sin when they're very, very young, and knowing right and wrong, they choose to sin, and then because of that, they end up, we all are under the effect of the devil. It is true that we have a sin nature. It is not true, though, that we are actually, some people say we're born sinners. That's actually not true. Because the Bible says everyone dies for their own sin. We did not inherit Adam's sin. We inherited a sin nature. And a lot of people say, wait a minute, what about Romans 5:12? Yeah, the Bible says, by one man sin entered into the world. Not into the people, into the world. By one man sin entered into the world, and death by sin. And so death passed upon all men. Do you know what most people think? Most people think that verse says, and sin passed upon all men. It doesn't say sin passed upon all men. It says death passed upon all men. For that all have sinned. So all have sinned means all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. Does it say all were born sinners and fell short of the glory of God? Or does it say all have sinned and come short of the glory of God? It says all have sinned. The Bible doesn't say all were born sinners. The Bible says all have sinned. We have actually sinned. Okay? We don't get to just put it off on Adam and go, well, Adam sinned, so here I am. No. You sinned. I sinned. We all have sinned. Now, did David say, I was shapen in iniquity, and in sin did my mother conceive me? Yeah, but he didn't say he inherited his mother's sin. He didn't say he inherited his father's sin. He didn't say he inherited Adam's sin. He said he was shapen in iniquity. Why? Because his mother had a sin nature. And so he was shapen when he was growing in his mother's womb. He was growing inside someone with a sin nature. He was shapen in iniquity. And in sin did my mother conceive me. His mother was a sinner, and when he was conceived in his mother's womb, he inherited her sin nature and his father's sin nature, because in sin did his mother conceive him. But it doesn't say he inherited Adam's sin. I know many of us were taught this. That idea that we inherited Adam's sin, that was started by a man named Augustine. He lived around the year 400 AD. He taught that we inherited Adam's sin. It's not in the Bible. The Bible says death passed upon all men. It doesn't say sin passed upon all men, okay? But what is the death? Well, the death is the sin nature. Because we have sinful flesh, right? We are born with a sin nature, which makes us desire to sin, which is what causes us to sin from a very young age. But it's the sins that we have committed that cause us to go to hell. Not Adam's sin. Adam's sin doesn't send you to hell because Adam had his own sin. But we inherited a sin nature, so we have the desire to sin, right? But when we sin with the knowledge of good and evil, and then that's and so and how can you prove that? Well, in the book of Revelation it says, and the books were open, and everyone was judged according to whether they inherited Adam's sin. Oh no, that's not what it says. Every man was judged according to his works. At the great white throne, the books are going to be open, and everyone's going to be judged according to what they've done, not according to what Adam did. Nobody's going to go to hell because of Adam. You're going to go to hell because of their sin. We have to get that clear. We have to understand that. Okay? And, I'm trying to remember now while I was saying that. Oh, the dragon. the devil. Oh yeah, I was talking about a serpent. Why the devil's called a serpent? Because he can poison you, right? But how is he poisoning you? He's convincing people and deceiving people, convincing them to sin like he convinced Adam and Eve to sin. And so when Adam and Eve sinned, the poison of sin entered them, right? And remember in the wilderness, Moses lifted up the serpent. They were bit by serpents in the wilderness and they were dying. They had the poison in them. And all they had to do was look at the serpent of brass and they were instantly made whole. And they didn't know why. Moses didn't know why he was putting up a serpent of brass. They didn't know why they had to look at the serpent of brass and be healed. They didn't know why. But in the New Testament, Jesus says, as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up. He said, that was a picture of me dying on a cross. If I be lifted up from the earth, I will draw all men unto me. It's not our job to lift up Jesus to draw people unto him. He was lifted up on the cross, and that's how he draws. Now, we do share the message. We tell people to look to Jesus, but we're not the one lifting him up. To lift up Jesus is to be crucified. We're not the ones that lifted him up. Okay? He was crucified, and then because he was crucified, he could draw all men unto him now. So Jesus was lifted up from the earth on the cross, and he died on the cross. All the sins of the world were put on him, and now each of us, even though we are bitten bitten by the serpent, right? Because the devil deceives the whole world. He deceives us into rebellion against God, and then we have the poison of sin in us, but now all we got to do is look and live. That's how we receive salvation. So that's one of the reasons why he's called a serpent, okay? Because he's deceptive, but also he has poison, right? The poison of sin. So he's called the dragon, okay? Because he devours, right? He's called a serpent, right? Because he's deceptive and he's got poison. He's called the devil. Now the word devil is a Greek word, and it's diabolos. And diabolos means, like El Diablo in Spanish, right? It's very close to the Greek, right? Devil comes from diablo. Diablo, devil, diabolos in Greek. It's very similar. It means the accuser. Okay, it means the accuser. So he accuses, right? He says, oh, you're worthless, you're no good. He's like, God's people are terrible. He accuses God. God is no fun, and he doesn't want you to have a good time. And then he gets you to sin. He accuses God, and he gets you to sin. And then he's like, see, you're a terrible person because you sin. The devil torments your conscience now that you sin. So he accuses God to get you to sin. Then he accuses you, right? He knocks you over, and then he kicks you when you're down. It doesn't play fair, right? And then, so when he gets other people, he accuses you to other people. Look at that terrible person. Look what they did to you. And then they get angry. They won't forgive you. Then he gets other people to sin against you. Then you get angry at them. You won't forgive them. And then pretty soon, he just created this huge tangled mess called the world, right? And it's because he's the accuser. So never listen to the voice of the accuser, okay? If you've sinned, there's forgiveness in Jesus Christ. And if someone else sins against you, you need to forgive them because Jesus has forgiven you. So you need to stop that. And God is good and holy and righteous, like we talked about on Thursday night. On Thursday night, we talked about how you're reading about God saying all of Amalek has to be wiped out, and then the accuser comes into your mind and accuses God. Amalek was the evil, wicked ones who were going and finding the weak people in the back of the in the back of the group of traveling Israelites in the desert and killing and capturing the weak people. They were very sinful, wicked. But then we look at that today and we go, well, that wasn't right. Why was God having Saul go and kill all the Amalekites? But that's what happens is the devil's the accuser. So he comes into your mind and he accuses God to you. God is a bad person. He accused God to Eve. He said, hath God said you shall not eat of every tree of the garden? God doesn't want you to have fun, right? So he accuses God. Then once you believe his accusation against God, then now you don't care, so you sin. Then he accuses you. You're a terrible person because you sin. And then he accuses other people to you, and he accuses you to other people. That's how he creates all that. So you need to understand, why is it describing the devil as the dragon, the serpent, the devil? And then what about Satan? What's this word? Why do you call him the devil and Satan? Okay. Well, Satan is a Hebrew word. Devil is a Greek word, and it means the accuser. But Satan is a Hebrew word, and it means the enemy. The enemy. So you got to realize who your enemy is. Your enemy is not your husband. Your enemy is not your wife. Your enemy is not your children. Your enemy is not your parents. Your enemy is not your fellow church member. Your enemy is not your pastor. Your enemy is not your congregation. Your enemy is not your neighbor. Your enemy is not even your president. None of those people are your enemy. Who is the enemy? The devil. Satan. His name is enemy. That's what he's called throughout the Old Testament, is enemy. Is Shaitan in Hebrew. If you were in Israel today and you were talking to an Orthodox Jew, he would refer to the devil as Shaitan. Okay? And it means the enemy. It means the one who hates. That's what it actually means, the one who hates. And so that's you have to. So the devil, the dragon, he devours. The serpent, he deceives, and he bites you with his poison, the poison of sin. He is the accuser. He constant accusation, accusing thoughts in your mind. That comes from the devil, and he is the adversary. He's the enemy. He's your real enemy. Human beings are not your enemy. We wrestle not against flesh and blood. So the devil is the enemy. And that's why he's called Satan. It means enemy. Every time you hear that word Satan, remember, it means enemy, which deceiveth the whole world. Okay, that's the other name for him, is the deceiver. He goes around. What he does, this is what the devil does. Oh my goodness, our time is up. He makes things seem different than they are. He's a deceiver who deceives the whole world. He makes things seem different than they are. Now, this is scary to you and me, because we think, if everything is not the way it seems, how do I know what's true? I know you thought I was going to say YouTube. It was like right at the tip of my mouth. Or CNN. I know you thought I was going to say, how do I know it's true? CNN. YouTube. No. See, when the devil said, did God say you shouldn't eat of every tree of the garden? What did Eve have? She had one command. She didn't have 1,500 pages. She had one sentence from God. If she had just listened to that one sentence, she would never have been deceived. If you want to avoid being deceived, just go with this. Don't go by how things seem. Satan is transformed into an angel of light. Okay? He's transformed into an angel of light. Don't go by how things seem. Go by what God says. He is the deceiver. And I am going to finish this next week as our time is up here. But Jesus said in Luke 10, I beheld Satan fall as lightning from heaven. We're going to talk about that. Why did Jesus see Satan cast out of heaven? And why is that significant? But we don't have time today. It'll take too much time. So I want you to remember that, though, about the devil. I want you to remember that he is a dragon, which means he wants to destroy everything. And I want you to remember that he is a serpent. So he slithers around and he has poison. He wants to poison you with sin. I want you to remember that he is an accuser. So accusation of you and God and other people, that comes from the devil. He's the enemy. He's the adversary. So people are not the enemy. And then remember that he is the deceiver who deceives the whole world. He makes things seem different than they are. He will make this church seem different than it is. He'll make your spouse seem different than they are. He'll make God seem different. He knows how to make everything seem true that's not true. Oh no, how am I going to know? Read the Bible. The Bible will tell you what's true and what's not true. And if you just follow the Bible, not CNN, I'm preaching to the choir here, but listen, not YouTube. Not any other source except the Bible. Now, you might hear a good YouTube video that points you to the Bible. Okay, then check it out with the Bible. You might hear a preacher that points you to the Bible. Well, check out what the preacher's saying with the Bible. Okay? So I'm not saying nobody out there is telling the truth. I'm just saying the only way you know that it's true is if you check it out with the Bible. The Bible is your standard to measure everything. And if you measure all the information that comes in through your eyes and through your ears, all the information that comes into you, if you filter it through God's Word, you will not be deceived. You just have to stick with what God says. Let's pray. Father in heaven, we're living in a time of great deception. I pray that we will be in your Word and that we will know the truth, and the truth will make us free. In Jesus' name, amen.